Kia ora, tēnā koutou, no mai, haere mai. Hello everyone, welcome to the Walking the Shadowlands podcast. Join me as we take a walk into the realms of the unexplained, of the paranormal, of things that go bump in the night and haunt your dreams.
Your hosts,
I'm Marianne. Thanks so much for joining me today, tonight, whatever time it is, wherever you live in this beautiful world of ours. Sit back and relax. Let me be your guide as we walk into the Shadowlands together and see what awaits us there. Welcome to another episode of our podcast where today my guest and I will be discussing a subject I actually have never talked about with anyone on any episode so far in my 13 seasons. It's a bit of a different part of the Shadowlands path we're walking today. My guest and I delve deep into the intersection of spirituality, mediumship, and astrology. Join us as we explore profound insights and personal experiences shared by my guest. Together, we look at the transformative power of understanding and embracing our human experience through the lens of astrology, offering a unique perspective that goes beyond conventional wisdom. As always, are you ready to walk into this particular part of the Shadowlands and see what awaits us there? Let's begin. I honestly don't know where to begin with the introduction for my guest today. Janine Kim is an amazing woman who has done so much in her life. She describes herself as a wife, mother, sister, aunt, friend, an intuitive medium, yogi, passionate truth seeker for all of her life. But really, that doesn't begin to scratch the surface of what Janine does. With over 25 different training modalities under her belt, such as astrology, healing arts, specifically she trained in Chinese medicine and Feng Shui in China, amongst many other healing modalities, such as massage, Reiki, past life, and trauma healing. Just too many to list here, but I'll have the full list on her page under my featured guests so you can see for yourself. Also to that list is author, and she's been featured in a number of books herself. I'd like to welcome my guest, Janine Kim. Today I have a lovely guest, Janine Kim, who's all the way from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I've been really excited to talk to her about what she does. It's a little bit different to what my normal podcast episodes are, but I think that you will all get some learning and some entertainment out of our conversation. I know that we're going to go into areas that I would never have considered, but I know that some of you have probably been looking for something like this. Welcome, Janine. It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Marianne. It's so lovely to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
And it's mid-afternoon there for you, early morning here for me in Australia. It's going to be, looks like it's going to be a beautiful day today, even though it's winter. You have quite a bit under your belt. You do a lot of things. You are a healer, an astrologer, you're an intuitive medium, you're a yogi, and you're a holistic health practitioner. That's a lot of things to have under your belt. And I can see that your life's journey has brought you to these modalities for sure.
It has. I started a long time ago out of passion and need I was an IPO trader in the financial industry in the 90s and other things. I had my Series 7, Series 63 in Chicago in the 90s. I'm from Chicago. And all my passions were yoga and esoteric teachings and just, really diving into those as a hobby and as a passion built in my soul. And it led me to doing it professionally. And I just jumped in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I just devoured it. And I never looked back, left the industry and went into healing.
Well, it's quite a difference. And yeah, quite a difference from the logical, structured corporate world to the free flowing world of following your intuition and listening to your soul. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Hearing it, I'm like, did that even happen? And if I didn't live it, I wouldn't, it did, it happened. Like I wouldn't have believed it, but yeah, it was wild. Yep. I did.
Before we go any further, Kristen, what is an IPO trade? I've never heard of that.
Initial public offerings. And so it's when stocks come out into public and you sell them, you get everybody to try to buy it right at its birth. And then it goes up from there. Typically, that's the point. That's the hope that they raise those funds and get what they need. So it's catching a stock before it becomes huge. Well, like imagine we got Apple before it became, all that it is today.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So that's a complete 360 turnaround.
Yes, ma'am.
And did that take you long to adjust, or did you find it very easy to let go of that corporate mindset?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes and no. The healing stuff was always who I was on the inside. And I had lived with it for so long in such a secretive spot.
Right.
That it started to literally, I tell people, it like spilled out of me. And yet when it did, I was like, yes. And I moved from Chicago to California. That helped it even more. The tricky part, however, was that I had built a whole structure of life, friends, relationships, and whatnot, geared around who I was, that external life. And then when the inside, the glorious, yummy, true me healing inside became the outside, the old outside had to crumble away. That was the hardest part. And it also did take me years, maybe decade, to unwind my nervous system, to re-regulate my nervous system little by little by little by little, right, to match that freedom that I had. I was up at 5:30 a.m. San Diego time to meet the stock market. That's when it opened. And then, to wake up every day and not have to do that and think that my life is worthwhile. It took me a while to unwind that as well, but I did.
Well, that would have been could have been quite an emotionally hard time, because it wasn't just letting go of your work. It was letting go of people who no longer were aligned with the same values and paths that you are.
That's exactly what it was. And it was hard. There was a divorce there that happened. There was a whole loss of friends, family. They liked it better when I was an IPO trader, not an intuitive who could talk to dead people. And I had my nose pierced. I had tattoos. Now this is, mind you, like late 90s, early 2000s. Like, why are you not eating meat? It's not Lent. Like that's all that they, the only way she knew it at the time, vegetarian. I'm not that way now, but just a lot of changes that went against the grain, and it took a lot of courage.
I was going to say that would have taken a lot of courage.
Especially back then.
Oh, God, yes.
Nobody talked about it.
No, and in the 90s, well, I don't know about in the States, but in the 90s in New Zealand, it was still very formal, and punk was just sort of coming out, and it was a difficult time. There was, I think it was like a worldwide transition time, actually.
I hear that. Yeah, there was the, astrologically, and I don't know, I haven't studied this enough, but the harmonics, like there's a convergence of energies that was happening that was really up, it was infusing, and we all met it differently. I heard that as a clarion call. Of course, I couldn't articulate that that's what that was. I just listened to my inner self.
Right.
And found myself in a different path altogether.
Wow. And so once you made this change, which modality came first for you?
Massage. Yes, massage. I was doing yoga on my own ever since I was a little girl, but consciously as an adult, I began it in the early 90s.
Right.
And so I was doing that along with the brokerage industry. And I was also eating differently. I was learning books from Norman Vincent Peale, Gary Zukov. I was reading Shirley MacLaine books. So that kind of satisfied this spiritual component of me. And then also reading up a lot about healing work, body, different ways to be with the body, because being a redhead, I'm really kind of sensitive in that way. And my body just required something different, and that it felt so right. Like vitamins, organic foods, things I put on my skin need to be organic, like all these different ways of being. So that began as an overlap. But the first thing that I did was I took massage school in the evening, and I became a massage therapist certified. And then I continued my training to a holistic health practitioner. And then Reiki came second. And then yoga certification came third. And then traditional Chinese medicine. I studied in Beijing as well. So all kind of unfolded. Yeah.
Wow. So you've really encompassed a whole lot under your umbrella.
I did. Jupiter's conjunct my sun, for anybody who knows what that means. And I'm a Leo. I can't help it. Like everything I do kind of comes that way.
Leo's now what? I'm not too up with all the star signs. It's not really been my thing. Leos, are they August, are they?
Yes, it's July and August, and the ruler is the sun, and Jupiter makes everything bigger. So when they're together, it's like you got all this energy. So I was able to harness it for the things that I love.
Oh, that's
and
good.
I just focused on it and got it all done.
Got it done. Oh, yeah, that sounds a bit like my daughter. I have a daughter who's August, and I guess she's Leo. Yeah.
Oh, what's your birthday? August
6th of August. Oh my God!
No, I get like that with I'm not kidding. I get like that with my second son. It's like I get his date and the year mixed up.
Yeah.
All the time, because it's 11 and 12, so I flip it. Poor guy. But no, the beginning of August is Leo, so she's a Leo as well.
Yeah, and she's certainly very strong. Let's talk a bit about astrology, because it's something that I've never actually done on this podcast. Mostly I cover paranormal unexplained, cryptozoology, but I've never really gone into the more esoteric or that aspect of this field, which it's part of, really. How did you become interested in astrology, and how long have you been doing it for?
That's a great question. My passion for it stems back to, Cosmopolitan magazine in the 70s and the 80s.
I remember that magazine.
And I mean, it started then. And the back of the newspaper, the Chicago Sun-Times, Sidney Omar, if anybody remembers that, and anybody from Chicago out there. I've loved astrology since I was a kid. I don't know where it comes from. Not only did I love astrology, but I loved astronomy. I was in the astronomy club. I just have a passion for nature and the stars. And I would always read my sun sign. And I would even use the little symbols when I was in high school and grammar school. But when I was a young girl, that it started there. But as I began my healing journey, as I mentioned with massage and all that, I dipped into intuitive reading work. And I'm a channeler just like you from birth, a very young girl. And so I don't need astrology to read someone. I don't need tarot to read someone. They're divination tools. So it's a tool to help people divinate. But if for us who could divinate without it, we don't need the tools.
Yeah.
But I loved it so much, I couldn't resist. So I found a great teacher. My teacher, Stephanie Azaria, whom I still adore her teachings in every way. And it was 5D astrology. And I started with that like in the late 2000s, before 2010, like late 2008, 9, 10, like around then. And then I began to study with her. And then I was able to be a mentor for her students. And I wrote for her as well for the Moon Report, her cosmic page, Cosmic Consciousness. And I loved it. Like it felt the way she taught it felt so right to me. It
Right.
wasn't just our planet at the time, our basic planets,
Yeah.
but she also included these, what she calls the 5D planets. And people are including them more so now, but back then nobody was doing it but Stephanie that I was
Right.
aware of. And those 5D planets, they're outside of our immediate solar system. They reflect our higher consciousness. And when we put that in our charts, we could see the higher aspects of ourselves that really support us on a daily basis. So it's so much fun. It's so fascinating. I love to give it to my clients so they feel that within themselves. And yeah, I love astrology. I adore it.
How long would it take you to do a person's astrological chart?
Forever, because I mean that because you could really, you read their birth chart and for me anyway, I'm always finding something out.
Right.
And then your birth chart is one way, but then today's sky, you superimpose that or you lay that with your birth chart and it's called the transits. And
Oh,
today's
okay.
sky activates your chart.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, which means that if there's something cool going on in the sky today, it may hit your birth chart in a way that it never has in your life.
Right.
So it's a reflection of you. It's unlocking something that you're ready for.
Mm.
But when I read people, of course, I could give them the main bulk of it. I'm being silly, but I could give them the main bulk of who they are. We do an hour session, an hour and a
Right.
half. But it's not, astrology is definitely not something that, once you learn it, you're done. Like I
Right.
still look at my birth chart and it's telling me new things all the time.
Right.
It's alive, it's organic, it's dynamic.
Well, I guess it would be because you're alive.
Exactly.
So it's ever changing.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like I always tell my clients nothing is ever set in stone.
Mm.
They're constantly changing and evolving. And even though other things may have influences on us, we ultimately choose what we do.
Always. Love that. Exactly. Precisely. Yep.
So the reason I asked about Australia, my oldest daughter, has an astrologer that she's in. I listened to a conversation. Her astrologer contacts her every 6 months and gives her an update. Yeah, which is quite interesting. I've never heard of that before. It was part of the initial consultation package. And she phoned her and she was telling my daughter about all these things that were happening in her life and what was coming up. And she was just 100% spot on. I, yeah, I was listening and I was going, yes, that's happened, that's happened, that's happened. And yes, she's definitely doing this, even though she's not consciously aware of it, she's doing this. And it was just, I was actually really impressed. It's the first time I've seen an astrologer in action. I mean, because you get those horoscopes and they're so generic that, anybody
So
can read
generic.
anything
Right.
into them.
Right.
But the actual astrology is very interesting. And for a long time, I sort of was dubious about it. But then as I came to understand energy more and how energy works, it just makes sense because everything reflects, everything is energy and it's all a matrix. So one thing connects with another, connects with another, connects with another.
That's what it is. It's really a patterning. And it's just, it's so funny. I'm pretty much of a doubting Thomas, which is why I'm probably like this. I realize to
Yeah.
realize soul needed to realize that I shouldn't be such a doubting Thomas. And I've been trying to debunk astrology forever, and it blows. I can't, like, it blows me away every time.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just blows me away.
Now, with your astrology, does the astrology, because I saw that you do soul retrieval work,
It's my favorite.
can you tell us about that and perhaps give us some, like experiences that you've had with clients that that you were able to share?
I'm able to share. Absolutely. Yeah. So I learned early on in my own personal exploration that past lives were my jam. I
Right.
just couldn't see someone without seeing
Mm.
who they were. I just
Oh,
couldn't.
right.
I just, and I didn't know what it was at first, but then I had wonderful teachers who were able to teach me and guide me. So I developed actually a program. I mean, I do past life work in a majority of every reading I ever do. It just comes up.
That right.
But I developed a program called Into the Mystic. It's a one-on-one mentoring program where when I do a past life regression, I don't have the person do it on their own, the regression. I do it with them.
Right.
Because I want them to be so released of it that I go ultra deep. But there's a certain way that I do it.
Mm.
I go into certain systems in the body. And what I find is that, our soul gave us these juicy masteries, but it was so clever that it put the trauma right along with that mastery. So we can't just pluck the mastery that much
Right.
without accessing that trauma as well as to release it, as
Mm.
to meet it with a different ability, because we're different than we were when the trauma happened.
Right.
And so these traumas, they repeat themselves, they come up in our lifetimes now. 9 times out of 10, even bigger than that, I feel that the traumas that we have, even though they come from our childhood, they're replayed out through different scenarios.
Right.
Their roots are farther than that.
Right.
So I go in, and there's a gazillion types of lifetimes, but I go for the specific root of the issue. And once you pluck that root in the way that I do, all the other ones collapse.
Right.
Then I use that. I have my clients use the wisdom I give them, the name of the individual. I give them the place. We get the theme, the story.
Wow.
So then when they start to see these dynamics showing up in their life today, they actually are like, okay, I feel it. Here it comes. I see it. But wait, that's over now.
Right. Right.
A lifetime's done.
Right.
So we organize the issue coming up then to put it over into that past life, not to escape it, not to throw it away,
Mm.
but to have a place to put it so you
Mm.
could see that you are the medicine to the wound that had happened so long ago. And then there's amazing space there for us to kind of bring about a different result.
Right.
So I could give you an example. It's a little bold of a past life. So cover your ears if it's too much. I'll try to say it quite gently. But it was a student of mine, actually. So this student, it wasn't a paying client. I was teaching massage at the time in San Diego. And it was myself and another teacher. She was getting like some kind of energy or a headache or something. So I started working on her. And as I'm working on her, all of a sudden I get a visual of feet. I could still go there and I could see it today. These black shoes, these black, almost like burlap, it looked like tights or something, black dress. And it was dark and kind of cold and damp. And I heard her hanging. She had been
Mm.
hanging from a tree. And I could hear the sound of the rope on the tree, like that squeaking rope on wood
Right.
sound. I could hear the people all around in an uproar. All I could see are heads, like putting, I was standing in the crowd, putting her up there. I could smell the smells. Like I get it all. When it comes, it's like I'm there.
Wow.
And so I got alarmed. What is going on? I just want to help this girl and give her a massage. I didn't know what it was. She saw this in me and she's like, Janine, what's wrong? And I said, nothing, nothing. Don't worry about it. I didn't know how to tell her.
Yeah.
You can't just, she didn't ask for this. She
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
a client. And I know how important words are, and I didn't want to hurt her with my words. So I really paused and I hesitated and I gave it a couple days, and she kept asking. I'm like, all right, she's asking. So I said, well, this is what I saw. And I said, I saw that you were a healer, or what we would call a healer.
Mm.
You lived on the edge of town. You were a divinator like this. They didn't like it.
Mm.
They took you out. I mean, she just worked with herbs and plants,
Yeah.
animals, right? But that was bad. And they took her out and they got rid of her. So she hears the story, and her her face gets really white and she gets really scared and she gets pale. And that was it. She just kind of, tears started coming. And I said, oh man, I have messed up. I'm going to hurt her. I'm going to get fired. Bad things are going to happen, you know? And she came to me a couple days later and she's like, can we step outside? I said, sure. And she brings me these pictures and she says, I've been an accountant for a while and my husband knew I wanted to come to this school to do healing work. And he never let me. And this time I said, no, I'm doing it. She packed her stuff to go. And when she did, he attacked her. And this is where it gets a little rough. He choked her. Okay. And her eyes had bulged and it put her in the hospital, but she broke free. And she showed me the pictures of her in the hospital with this wound. But she broke free. And she came to the school anyway, but yet she felt so much shame. And then more information started coming from me. And I said, what I'm hearing is you didn't choose wrong. This was a threshold that you needed to cross again, to come to the other side of, not just by way of the mind, but through the action, through the body. Now you're free of it. So you could not have bucked this. This was your karmic path. You've done nothing wrong. And just a little side note to people who are hearing this, that doesn't mean that we have to stay in bad relationships or anyone or anything that's going to hurt us. Her whole point was breaking free of it.
Yeah.
But then to release the shame, she realized that she was right where she needed to be when it happened.
Right.
And it was her choice to fight it and her ability to do that in our current context that closed that past life story. But she was carrying so much shame that she couldn't even move forward as a healer. And after she heard that story, the shame was gone. She's like, I get it now. I'm free and I chose away from him. So that's how deeply healing it is.
Right.
Like she was so much lighter after that. Like just so much more joyful.
So soul retrieval then is dealing with past traumas that have continued on into this reality.
Yes. Little and big. What I have seen through the years has been incredible. We truly pick up where we left off, but because we're the medicine and because we have so much more of a capacity now from other lifetimes as well.
Right.
We need to integrate these wounds. We can't just put a happy face sticker on them or think them away with positivity.
Right.
Again, that doesn't mean go into a bad place.
Right.
It just means meet the wounds, meet the fear, meet the deep, harsh feelings inside of you, because they're going to keep coming around until you actually play with them.
I have a personal experience that I talked about when I did an episode on past life regressions. And it was a phobia that I had carried over from a past life. And what happened was I had this intense fear of walking in mud, of any muddy, an absolute intense fear. I didn't realize that actually I had that fear. It wasn't a conscious thing. I just, avoided it at all costs. And one day I was out on a farm in New Zealand. We were visiting, and my son or my daughter, I can't remember who it was, fell into what we call a cattle run, where the cattle will go to get milked, and it's all pooey and muddy, and it was disgusting. She fell like head first in. So I went to grab her, and I took her to the bathroom to clean her up. And I was just shaking. And I was so scared and so overwhelmed. And I thought, what the heck is going on with me? I couldn't understand it. And then, I don't know how long later it was. I don't know if you recall, there was a massive landslide in a Central American country, a laha, a muddy, watery landslide. And there was this young girl that was trapped in it, and they couldn't rescue her. And it just hit me. And then I just had this remembering that I was a young girl and I was killed in a muddy laha like her. And then it like twigged, oh my God, that's why I have this fear. And it really, quite strongly. Yeah. And from that I was able to recognize it. So now it's not an issue. And so many people I know do come with past life fears that hold them back.
They do. Thank you for sharing. See, that's these past lives, and this is what I love to tell my clients. Everybody wants to be seen and heard. Everyone. And these past lives are no different. They are somebody. And in that time, when you went through that pain, when you went through that suffering, there was nobody who could understand that.
Yeah.
Not even you, but there was, if from a super macro perspective, you were going through it. And now you're Marianne, and there's a consciousness that could see that.
Yeah.
For a different reason other than the suffering and that fear that you experienced. But, past lives, they're just like any other life. They keep tugging on you, nudging you until you look at it and set it free. And then when you do, it's not just free, it's integrated.
Yes.
Because it's where the old you meets the new you. And you're like, you know what? Marianne is safe now. She's free. She's loved. She could go into the mud.
Yeah.
And she's going to be okay. Maybe little by little, but let me give a nod to my little girl who had died that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
exactly what I did, actually. And it wasn't an immediate process. It took a little while to
Of course, you got to redo the nervous system. Yep.
Yeah. And so I learned during that episode that in that episode, it focused actually quite a bit on the trade center and the trade center going down. And it wasn't meant to, but there were a lot of children. For some reason, it focused on the children. And the daughter of a friend of mine, well, actually, she's a niece, sent me a recording of her and her young daughter and a young friend talking. And they knew nothing about the World Trade Center. They were only 4 or 5. And they were talking about, remember when the building went down? And they remembered it. And they were talking about it between themselves, what happened and how they remember what happened. So they must have been friends at that time. And then she said they talked about it just the one time and that was it. They didn't remember anything after that. They never talked about it again, but that was all they needed to integrate it into their lives.
The soul wants to process it now, so then it can embrace and kind of leave off the goodies that it gave us then, and then we can kind of pick up where we left off in a real cohesive way, like coherent way, like just an aligned sort of way. Not that it's back here in a memory or a thought form, but that we actually sense it through our system.
Yes.
It roots us into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And that's kind of like what I tell clients too. You have to let yourself feel things to the fullest in order to be able to let them go.
Completely. And I know, and there's a lot of people, and you probably have the same that I work with, past lives that are they have a great spiritual capacity. And that capacity was built upon many other lifetimes where the storylines were steeped in the rhetoric or the dogma of cultural, religious aspects.
Right.
And so, it's like to let that go. And a lot of it was about not feeling. Like, don't feel, don't listen to the body, just devotion. And that's okay, because that delivered them to their gift. But now it's about circling back around and saying, what's some of the collateral damage of those lifetimes where I didn't get to feel those things? I didn't get to listen to my body.
Right.
Let me bring that back into the mix in a real gentle way. And I'm right with you. You and Bruce Lee, don't think, feel.
Bruce Lee. Oh, I used to love Bruce Lee. He was so cool. That's a whole nother story.
But don't feel. He would say that all the time. And actually, that's the mantra for this year in my tribe.
Oh,
it's a kind of paywall tribe. It's called Feel the Mastery. That's the mantra for this year.
One thing, I've mentioned this numerous times on my podcast when I've talked about my star people experiences. My favorite star person once said to me, Miriam, when you do anything, you must do it from your heart. When you think from your heart. When you feel from your heart. When you speak from your heart. When you act from your heart. And
that is so beautiful. I'm not kidding, Miriam. I just put out another mantra in my tribe. It's the energy for this remainder of this week that you and I are recording. It's called Heart Speak.
There you go.
I you can look on my website. It's under the podcast area. That's the name of this week. Heart Speak is the audio.
Oh, wow.
So a little nod to your star person. Like I feel like that's a little message from them probably.
Yeah, yeah.
How you're channeling it right at this moment that we're
Yeah.
together.
That yeah, and since he said that to me, that's how I've tried to live my life. Of course, I'm human, and I
All right.
sometimes
There's moments. There's
yeah,
moments.
yeah, I get impatient and I get angry like everybody, but that's really
Right.
what I try to work from. Now, have you found that in your work that you come across many people like myself who have phobias in this life that come from
All the time.
Mm,
My children, yes. Myself, all the time.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. And I find it like I don't know certain things and I'll see the past life of my client and they're like, oh my God, that's why I don't like the water. Oh my gosh. Like my one little son, it was really about he couldn't have me touch his head a certain way, very sensitive.
yeah,
And I would get these visuals of what that was for him. And, I would just let it come. And I would say, not this life, baby. You're fine. I'd give him little kisses. And then before you know it, it took years, but then it goes away. So it's like just letting it be and
yeah,
letting it be re-met with a softer hand, kinder heart, just a soft place to land. Like let it be and know that if it's activated in you, where is that? Just ask yourself, where is that coming from? If we're
mm,
all like utilitarian blobs of biology, then we wouldn't have one person doesn't like mud, the other one doesn't like snakes or heights.
yeah,
That's me. The
yeah,
other one doesn't want you to touch their head. Like I can't have anything around my neck. Like I can't. It's like so. This comes from somewhere.
mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting, very, very interesting. So, mm, what is the greatest thing that you've learned from this work, this particular soul retrieval work?
That we are couple things. First of all, everything is exactly as it should be. Should be. And second, that we're more powerful than we imagine.
Mm,
If we orient ourselves to doing this deep work, I feel it's exactly why we are here. We stop going around in these cycles and we get to the bottom of it. And it's empowering for the individual.
yeah,
And I love to make people feel empowered because life is such an awesome thing. And trust me, I've had so many highs and lows and it's been rough. So I'm not speaking from some like fluffy place.
yeah,
It's just a space for us to realize so much about ourselves. And when we can work and include this past life stuff, boy, oh boy, everything is just as it should be. Some things we're not meant to do, some things we are, and we're more powerful than we ever imagined.
right. I know you left home very young, and you've pretty much been by yourself since you left home. What, you were in your mid-teens, maybe 18, was it?
17,
17.
almost 18. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually same age as me when I left home too. Yeah. So I can relate to you on a lot of
Oh,
levels, actually.
yes. Yeah. It almost, my oldest son is that age now. And I'm like, what? No, I couldn't even imagine, but that's what happened.
Yeah. And of course it was different. It was a different lifestyle back in those days.
Very different.
Very different to what it is these days for children. Okay, so as a holistic health practitioner, you bring in all the modalities that you use. You use your mediumistic abilities, your intuitive abilities. Is there any specific modality that you use when you're working as a health? Like, do you work with flower essences or stuff like that?
You. I love nutrition. I use all the time.
Right.
I use Chinese herbs, traditional Chinese medicine. I go by way of the meridians a lot. I love flower essence. I'm learning homeopathy as we speak. I'm
All
in
right.
knee deep. I've been practicing it by way of observing it through my family very intensely over the past 4 years. And now I'm going into the learning of it. And I hear it, from spirit, but I'm trying to build a strong context in which to bring it forth more solidly. So
Right.
I love it. But yeah, mostly nutrition I do and yoga, getting in the body. So I teach people like basic ways to live in real practical ways. So I not only do the readings, but I hear how they could support themselves by herbs, vitamins, nutrition. And yeah, I just have flower essences right back here. All my little ones.
Go.
I think I took one before we started today. So
There you
yeah.
go. So it's all vibration and energy, really, is what it's about.
Yes, yes. And acupuncture, meridian work. Yeah.
I know one of the things that the star people taught me when I was a youngster, because I've had experiences with them face to face since I was 3 years old. And
Oh my goodness.
I remember being in a teaching situation one time where they were, a learning situation where they were teaching me about the importance of vibration and healing,
Yes.
and how sound and vibration and healing are so, so important. And everything is vibration based, everything. Like what we perceive as being solid, this desk, this table, this microphone, this chair, they're not. They're in constant state of movement and vibration. We just perceive them as being solid. So I can, from that perspective, I can totally see how things like flower essences work. That it's the vibrational aspect, not the actual liquid that you're taking. Just the medium to get it into your body.
It is so true. And your what you said so beautifully, the understanding that everything is energy, everything is vibration first. This is precisely why I love working with past lives and getting into those deeper because I see us like a ball of chi. You probably see people that way as well. And wherever we go, there we are. So no matter if we're just wanting to focus on what we would call the good and not look at the negative or the
Yeah.
bad, it's still in there. If we're
Mm.
going, it's coming around with us. And sometimes we're just not ready, and that's okay too. But it's so important to remember those bits. I love to go straight to them,
Yeah. Yeah.
sort them out, and then bring that positive along for the ride.
Yeah. I have a Facebook group that's been going for nearly 8 years now. And I started it. Actually, this podcast started from it. My mentors asked me to start a podcast where I, give spiritual advice and I help people where I can. It's, all free. And
Right.
one of my mods, really a lovely man, he has been doing a lot of shadow work. He calls it shadow work. And it's, maybe you could explain what work is for people who don't know in a bit, but it's been a journey for him because it's hard to deal with that aspect of yourself, to even acknowledge that that you're not all, and I hate this term, love and light, you know?
Oh no. Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that. I'm right. Keep going. I'm right.
Yeah, I just loathe that term because
Oh,
most
I
people,
love it. Oh my God.
yeah, it's just, but I just use that term because a lot of people, especially in the spiritual community,
Yeah.
put this persona out
Mhm.
that everything's
Yeah.
daisies and coming up roses, and if you have any negative thoughts or negative aspects of yourself, then really you're an unevolved soul and you have a lot of work to do.
If
It's
there's a
like,
hierarchy, they put out that spiritual ego. There's a
yeah,
hierarchy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And to me, with my knowing of what my star people have taught me, it fits alongside every religion of this world because they're all a form of control.
Thank you. Uh, Yes. Triple yes, quadruple yes. Yes, I'm right there with you. And I can't use that word because to me there's a spectrum of light. Not all that glitters is gold.
Yeah.
And then there's a spectrum of dark and what we perceive as dark. And I love to reframe the word dark as dense. I love
Yeah.
to speak of things in the phrase of the type of frequency that it is, because yin is dark. The womb is dark. The dark of the night is where creation happens.
Yeah.
Why would we want to run away from that? It's the
Yeah.
what I don't mean, and I just mean it is a creative essence. I don't mean it as a woman. I just mean it's that feminine force that dark seed that allows that creation to come forth. So I'm right there with you on that, absolutely without a doubt. And I rub people the wrong way. I don't do love and light. I just don't.
Yeah.
It's all love, man. Every last drop of it
Yeah. Yeah.
is love. And
Yeah.
all of it is just grades of frequency. And we want that stuff so we could bring it on up and out. And the shadow is just the stuff that we're afraid to look at. Maybe we weren't equipped before to look at.
Yeah.
We can't embrace about ourselves. I just feel everybody is reflecting who we are. I also don't use the word forgiveness.
Mm.
I don't like it. I, there's a couple words that I feel are more of an output than an input. For
Right.
instance, forgiveness is the byproduct or an output of
Mm.
understanding. So
Mm.
instead of saying, I need to forgive something, how about instead we replace that with, I want to understand. I just want to understand.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you got to like it. Doesn't mean you're going to let it in your life.
Yeah.
But when you understand it, all of a sudden, what feels like forgiveness happens. You would maybe even choose it,
Mm.
but you understand.
Mm.
That's a deeper thing. Forgiveness is still hierarchical. Says,
Right.
okay, I forgive you. You're down there, bad guy. I forgive you. I'm better than you. It's
Yeah.
that spiritual. It's that egoic spirituality. I'm just
Yeah.
not there. I don't care
Yeah.
for that. I don't care for it.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, it's there and it's for a reason, but it's not. I think the best for everybody in their greater growth journey.
I like your wording of understanding because I always say to people, I was a nurse for most of my working career. So yeah, we followed similar paths, in different ways. And I was always say to people, look, because they're always scared, they don't know what's going on. I say, once you have the understanding of what's going on, then you can make choices, then you can make decisions, then it's not so scary because you know what you're dealing with.
Right. Mhm.
And I think that's the same with shadow work.
It is. It is. It's, I could think of, like you had mentioned, I moved out when I was 17 and it was hard. It wasn't easy. I didn't get along very
Mm.
well with my mother and it was hard. Still hard.
Mm.
Hard. But what I've come to do is to understand her place.
Yes.
And when I understand it, it may not change the way it plays out,
Mm.
but my heart opens.
Mhm.
And there's great love. We may not still be able to be together, but there's this, I get it. Like I just
Yeah.
get on such a different level. And that I feel like the whole purpose of this whole ride is to, to feel the contraction and then the open,
Mm.
is to be that upsetness. And like you said, and we both agree, all the feelings
Mm.
and to let them take you where they want to take you, but then seek to understand.
Mm.
And when we do, we're empowered, and everybody is right where they need to be. And I often find that people who have a lot of what we would say dark things, it's because they can,
Yeah.
and their souls are ripe and ready for that. I don't feel like it's less than. They're certainly not less than any.
No, just on a different path, that's all.
That's all. That's it.
Mm. Mm. And I always say, people come into our lives, cross our paths for a time, a reason, or a season. There's a reason for interaction with people. What
Right.
advice would you give to somebody who's just opening up and starting to learn to trust their intuition or to even recognize what they're feeling?
In the journey with intuition, I find, and I would love to hear your feedback on this, but I find is a deep one. It's a big ask and it's experientially based.
Mm.
The way it grows is by trusting it more and more and more.
Mm.
And yet to remember that the spiritual path, as you mentioned earlier, isn't all unicorns and daisies and butterflies. So if you get a message and so many people will say to me, Janine, I don't like to follow my intuition. Whenever I do, something bad happens and it's always wrong. And I say, okay, tell me about that. Tell me what that means to you. And they'll say, well, I'm having a hard time in my relationship. And then I get this intuitive hit to say something and I say it and all hell breaks loose. I'm like, oh, okay. What happens? Well, the boyfriend doesn't like it. We get into a fight, this and that. And I'm thinking, maybe that's exactly what was needed to get you to the bigger place you wanted to go to. And so trusting the intuition doesn't garner necessarily immediate results of what you imagine it's going to lead you to. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's breaking away the path that you're on right now to take you precisely to where you got to go.
Right.
So don't give up on it. And it's just like a kitchen. Say like you wanted your kitchen redone. If the property brothers came tomorrow to redo your kitchen, they're going to tear down walls. It's going to get messy for a while.
Yeah.
Before the end result comes. So trust your intuition step by step without the result.
Actually, it's a good way to look at it. When you were talking, a client came to mind that I had one time. He came in for a consultation. He was an older man, would have been in his late 60s, early 70s. Immediately, his mum was there with me. And this was when I was still being polite in what I said to people, rather than,
Right.
And she said to me, and these are her exact words, tell him he's a fuckwit. And I said to her, I can't say that to him. I can't say that. I was in my 30s then. I can't say that to them.
Oh, no.
It's not even language I use. It's not even language I use. And she said, you tell him that. Tell him those exact words. And I said, look, I've got your mum here.
Oh, no.
She looks like this, and she passed this way, and he's, I'm sorry, but I've got to say this. He says that you're a fuckwit.
Oh, my goodness.
And he burst out crying. And I said, and he cried for like a good 10 minutes. And I terrible. And then when he stopped, he looked at me, blew his nose and said, thank you, that's exactly what I needed to hear. That's exactly what my mum would have said to me. And then I learned that you have to face the truth, say it no matter what it is.
And that goes right in line, I feel, with, I love that the spiritual conversation has opened up, right? Like Saturn is in Pisces, first time in 30 years, Saturn's crystallizes Pisces, the spiritual concept, right? Brings it out into humanity, first time in 30 years. We could look back early 90s. There was the other time, the late 60s. You see those themes, and it's here. But it's not, spirituality isn't a concept of what we believe. And so many people will say, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And to me, again, that separates things out. And what I love to say is being human is the most spiritual thing you can do. And so you calling him that, like letting it be something outside of this pristine concept, is merging spirit with this biology. This body, it's like saying, to me, this body is the most spiritual thing that there is.
Right.
That's like saying a flower is not the roots.
Right.
Why? Because it's dirty and gross and under the dirt and
yeah. Good point, actually. Yeah.
No, just because we want to look at the pretty stuff, not the gross down below. Well, if a flower is sick, what's the first thing you go to? The roots.
Very valid point.
The tree is not well, right? So this is the most spiritual thing we could do here.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
It just brings it back to, imagine if you had not said that to him, because you had a spiritual editing portion in your mind, which, we're all right where we need to be.
Yeah.
But if we over intellectualize spirituality, we will say, that's not spiritual.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Buddha wouldn't say that. We're like, how do we know? Smiling Buddha. And I think that it's because he just flipped off somebody from down the freeway.
Yeah.
That's about good. And he doesn't feel any shame at all. Totally light or anybody. He just let it out.
Yeah.
So, it's like more about consciousness. It's more about how conscious we are when we're with it, as opposed to, pushing things down and being so spot on, but then it just comes out with no consciousness whatsoever. Again, that's perfect in its own way as well. That's part of the journey, but you saying that saved his day.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yes.
who was too spiritually minded wouldn't have done it.
Well, it was a huge learning for me. And
Yeah.
that made, and I always learn. I'm always learning with everybody I interact with on a mediumistic or intuitive level. I'm always learning. And, well, on an everyday level.
Yeah.
And then I've learned that you have to tell people how it is. It's like being a nurse. You can't rip a Band-Aid off bit by bit. You have to take it off in one fell swoop. And
Yeah.
it may be painful at the time, but it's less painful ultimately. And everybody that I have been, and I am brutally honest with people when I do consultations. Like I always say to people, look, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm telling you what you need to hear.
And that's why they come to you on a soul level. Their soul knows
Yes.
precisely what they're going to get.
Yeah, yeah. And they, even in my group, they always say, oh, even if they get told off, thank you, I needed to hear that. That's what I needed to know.
And just like the woman who was hung, right? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I too was learning, like, how do I say this? What do I say? Like, I was afraid. I mean, this was early 2000. And yet, being brutally honest with what I saw meant something to her deeply. And it unleashed like a shame that she would have carried along with her for the rest of her life, and not been able to fully blossom from. So, I get you. And there's other stories where I've learned that as well. I see pictures of same thing, dead people. Like I channeled this one gentleman for his daughter. I was actually reading her. Her daughter died in delivery of a grandchild, and the daughter died and the grandchild.
Oh, no.
So I had a consultation with the mama, and to me, this is all karmic. If I don't align with the message, it's on me, man. Like I gotta, and I knew that she was in a fragile state. And I feel this way for everybody, but I knew that she was ultra fragile.
Yeah.
And so, I'm channeling things that she, that I was seeing for her daughter and for her. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see this old man, skinny, scrawny old man, skinny, scrawny face. And then all of a sudden his body morphs into Superman, but he's got the skinny, scrawny face. And he's got the red cape on. He's on a big, big building in New York. And next thing you know, he's making muscles and he's like making the muscles like this and he's flexing. And then he was clenching his little butt cheeks. He was like squeezing his butt cheeks, his own. He was like squeezing them. And I'm thinking, the heck am I looking at? And I'm like, I am not saying this to her.
Yeah.
No. And I'm fighting with myself. I'm like, saying this to her? A woman, what am I going to tell her this? I'm going to bring this to her in this state of mind. There's just no way. And so I see him and I'm like, I see this man and I wanted to move past it. I couldn't. Nothing else was coming in. It's like the guides were saying, or the messaging was saying, you got to step it up. You got to say it. So I share it with her and I go slow, and she's like, oh my God, that's my father. My dad had died. And I'm like, okay, he's clenching his butt cheeks. She goes, yeah, he was super skinny and he would make fun of himself because he was tiny and he'd always pretend and try to make muscles like this at the beach in New York, and then I'm like, well, and then it went a little farther. I'm like, ooh, it was pushing the edge the whole time. I saw him with her daughter and the baby, and he's flying around New York, like showing her around New York, like he's Superman. And I'm like, oh, I didn't want to go there because this is delicate, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, can I tell you what I'm seeing? And I shared it with her. And she said, he was a cab driver in New York. My daughter has always wanted to see all of New York. Couldn't do it. So he was able to take her, and he brought up the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places We Go. It was her favorite book when she was little. So now he was telling the mama, that they're together. All of them are together, showing him around New York. He's the buff dude that he always wanted to be with the same old man face. But it was a leap for me because it was so light and she was in such a deep space. And I don't mind bringing levity, but it could be, it was just a tricky moment and I had to really trust it. So again, the journey is trusting these messages no matter what.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely.
Right? Like it's scary. We know,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
know where I'm going to say next. It's not like I know. Like
Yeah,
being challenged always.
always. I remember when I first started doing consultations, I had a young woman come to me in her 20s and she was heartbroken. Her partner had died and she was really devastated. And was showing me this peach, a peach, the peach with the curve in the center. And I said to her, look, I don't know why, because at that stage I was still developing.
Yes.
And I said, I don't know why, but he keeps showing me this peach. And again, she burst out crying. And then I got it. And I said, oh my God, he used to tell you your butt reminded him of a peach, didn't he?
I was seeing a girl as you were saying it, Marianne. And what did she
Cried. She cried. Yes, that, absolutely he did. That was his favorite thing to say to me. So it's an interesting life being an intuitive, isn't it?
It is such an interesting life. And you know what? How blessed are we though, Marianne?
Yeah.
Like you're on the other side of the world. I'm on the other side of the world. And back in the day, we couldn't have this camaraderie.
No.
It was, so we've come a long way, right?
Yeah, we have. And so now are you on social media at all? Like where can people contact you if they want to contact you?
If they want to contact me, it's janinekim.com. I'm old school, just janinekim.com. I got all my clients that way. Yeah, word of mouth.
Are you on Instagram or TikTok or any of the other social media platforms?
No. I was on Instagram because I wanted to give it a try. It's not for me. It's not my way. I do YouTube. I have a YouTube channel that I just started about 6 or 7 months ago where I give like weekly updates, midweek energy updates, things like that. So I'm there and Spotify and then my website and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your YouTube channel called? Is it Janine Kim as well?
You got it. Janine Kim. Yes, Janine Kim, YouTube.
Okay, cool. So for those listeners who didn't quite catch that, there will be links to Janine's website and her YouTube channel on this episode's page on the podcast website, www.walkingtheshadowlands.com. So you can go there and you can see a full written transcript of this episode there. Also, you can click on her links and visit her sites from there if you didn't watch it. Janine, this has been a really interesting conversation. It's been way different to what I normally do. It's really nice to go into this area, which is something I've never done. Really, I haven't really talked about my mediumistic stuff on this podcast before. So this is the first time that I've talked about things like that. So this is going to be different for my listeners. And I know that there are some who have been asking me for stuff like this. So it's probably just time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's time. Jupiter is in Gemini. The big expression. Well, I'm so happy. I just feel your purity from here and your giftedness. So it was such a joy to be with you today. Thank you, Marianne.
I've really enjoyed our conversation, Janine. It's been really lovely. Yeah, it's been really, really great.
Thank you for the opportunity, Marianne. Really, I just loved being here with you today.
As I wrap up this episode, it's good to reflect on the deep interplay between spirituality, astrology, and our everyday lives. Janine's profound insights have shed light on the importance of embracing our true selves and honoring our intuitive guidance as essential elements of personal growth and healing. I know personally that there was much Janine said that hit me on a soul level, and I've reflected on a great deal since our conversation. And I would once again like to thank Janine for being on our podcast, and also a special thanks to you, my listener, for tuning in. I feel sure that Janine's wisdom imparted in today's conversation resonates with many of you and will help you as you navigate your life's path forward. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others and leave our podcast a review. Your feedback helps me to bring more thought-provoking content to you. Also, consider becoming a supporter and helping me with the running costs of keeping this podcast on the air. You can buy me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/Walking the Shadowlands or become a monthly supporter. Any help, big or small, to keep our podcast up and running is appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with friends, and so you don't miss out on any episode, follow for teasers of our upcoming shows on any of these social media platforms. Our Facebook page, WT Shadowlands, our Instagram feed, Walking the Shadowlands, TikTok under Walking_the_Shadowlands. We have a YouTube channel under Walking the Shadowlands as well. This podcast is available on all free podcasting platforms. Also, if you have Alexa, just say, "Open Walking the Shadowlands," and Alexa will play our latest episode for you. If you don't have a smartphone, don't worry. You can still listen to the episodes from the podcast website, www.walkingtheshadowlands.com. For those hearing impaired, there's a full written transcript of each episode on the website, so you don't miss out either. Until next time, this is Marianne bidding you farewell from the Shadowlands. Thanks for listening to this episode. Ka kite.